Hey there movie lovers, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're heading into the wilderness with the 1982 action classic First Blood. Sylvester Stallone brought John Rambo to the big screen in a film packed with survival, action and tension. But there's far more to this movie than meets the eye. So grab your knife, stay alive and get ready for 20 things you never knew about First Blood. The film spent a decade in development hell, with more than 26 scripts written before Sylvester Stallone became involved. Eventual director Ted Kotcheff had already spent months working on a screenplay before the project moved between studios. Years later, when Kotcheff was asked which film he would most like to direct, he brought First Blood back to the table. Stallone was approached for the role because of his popularity in the Rocky franchise, but initially turned it down. He felt the project had passed through too many actors and would never actually be made. He eventually agreed after being given the opportunity to rewrite the screenplay, reportedly for a $3.5 million salary. Rambo's name came from an apple. David Morrell's 1972 novel was the source for First Blood, and he named his character after a variety of apple cultivated by 17th century Swedish settler Peter Gunnarsson Rambo. Morrell had been struggling to name his main character when he happened to eat an apple as a snack. When he asked his wife what variety it was, she told him it was called Rambo. The name immediately struck him as sounding strong and forceful. The character had no first name in the novel, but the film gave him the full name John Rambo. Morrell was inspired to create Rambo after reading about World War II hero Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of the war. Murphy earned every possible US military decoration for bravery, along with 5 foreign decorations, including honours from France and Belgium. After the war, Murphy starred as himself into Hell and Back, based on his autobiography, and went on to appear in 44 feature films. He later suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which also influenced Morrell's portrayal of Rambo. Morrell, who was born in Canada, later shifted the novel's setting to the post-Vietnam era, influenced by the political and cultural climate he had witnessed while studying at Penn State in the late 1960s. Sadly, Murphy died in a plane crash in 1971. The John Rambo seen in First Blood is very different from the character in David Morrell's novel. The book's Rambo is young, brash and driven by revenge, killing several people throughout the story. Stallone, who rewrote much of the screenplay, instead viewed Rambo as something closer to Frankenstein's monster, a creation that had been abandoned and left to fend for itself. Stallone's changes made Rambo a more sympathetic character rather than the PTSD-driven killing machine portrayed in Morrell's novel. Kirk Douglas was originally set to play Colonel Sam Troutman, but arrived on set with a heavily rewritten version of the script. Although he had previously approved the final screenplay, his new version altered the roles of Rambo and Troutman dramatically, turning the Colonel into the film's hero and having him kill Rambo at the end. Douglas claimed he left First Blood over a creative dispute about the ending, but director Ted Kotcheff's production records suggest otherwise. According to his filming diaries, Douglas was dismissed after repeatedly disrupting scenes, referring to himself in the third person, and trying to claim dialogue written for other characters. After losing one of its major stars just days before filming was due to begin, Richard Crenna's agent was contacted and he was offered the role of Colonel Troutman. Crenna had been working on Broadway but managed to board a plane and arrive in Canada for filming in less than 72 hours. At the time, Crenna had been playing a homosexual doctor, which initially influenced the way he delivered some of his lines. Stallone intervened and helped steer his performance in a different direction. Crenna's chemistry with Stallone proved so successful that Troutman returned in each of the next 2 Rambo films. Stallone suffered several injuries during filming. He cracked ribs while filming the tree fall scene, nearly lost a finger when a squib exploded as he ran into the cave to escape the National Guardsmen, and regularly battled hypothermia as temperatures dropped well below freezing. The powerful fire hose used to spray Rambo was another problem. The force was so intense that it stripped away his prosthetic scars, requiring around 2 hours to reapply them. Stallone wasn't the only one who got battered and bruised. During the climax, Sheriff Teasel falls through the ceiling after Rambo fires enough rounds into it to bring the structure down. Although Brian Dennehy did not perform the fall through the roof, he did perform his own stunt landing on the table below and suffered several broken ribs. Other accidents occurred during production. A stuntman was seriously injured during the dirt bike chase when the sheriff's car accidentally flipped over. Stallone also genuinely broke actor Alf Humphrey's nose during Rambo's escape from the police station, helping explain why the scene looks so convincing and why he wears a plaster on his nose throughout the rest of the film. Now back to that chase scene between Rambo on a motorbike and Sheriff Teasel, where Teasel's police car rolls off an embankment and flips over upside down. This was not scripted this way, but when the car ended up in that position, director Ted Kotcheff liked the result so much that he had Brian Dennehy get into the police car while it was still upside down, and filmed the scene as it appears in the movie. Despite Rambo's reputation as a ruthless killer, he does not actually kill anyone in First Blood. Instead, he severely injures the men hunting him. This was a deliberate change made by Stallone, who wanted Rambo to be portrayed as an underdog rather than the PTSD-driven killer from the novel, believing the original version would alienate audiences. The only death is a deputy, who pursues Rambo through the mountains in a helicopter. After he attempts to shoot him with a rifle, Rambo throws a rock towards the helicopter in self-defense. The deputy loses his balance and falls to his death. So I suppose technically Rambo didn't kill him. The original ending of the film had Rambo dying at the hands of Colonel Troutman. The scene was filmed but later removed. Stallone personally selected renowned knife maker Jimmy Lyle to design Rambo's survival knife. It was designed for extreme situations, with a long, sharp blade for cutting food and wood, a waterproof hollow handle for storing essentials such as matches and medicine, and a nylon cord for fishing or making snares. A secondary saw-toothed edge could also be used for defense or cutting poles for shelter. In total, 6 knives were created for the production. Before Stallone took the role, a remarkable list of actors were considered for John Rambo, including Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, John Travolta and Dustin Hoffman. Mike Nichols was initially interested in directing and wanted Hoffman to play the lead, but Hoffman rejected the role because he considered the story too violent. Al Pacino was also considered, but turned down the part after his request to portray Rambo as a more unhinged character, closer to the novel, was rejected. Nick Nolte, Michael Douglas and James Garner also turned down the role. Garner, a Korean War veteran who had earned 2 Purple Hearts, did not want to portray a returning soldier who came home and began fighting the police. A major part of the novel that did not make it into the film is the conflict between Sheriff Teasel and Rambo over their military backgrounds. In the book, Teasel is a decorated Korean War veteran, while Rambo is a Vietnam vet. The contrast reflects the different ways the 2 wars were viewed in America, with the Korean War often remembered as the Forgotten War, while Vietnam remained a major part of everyday life for many Americans. Teasel is also far tougher in the novel, while Rambo is more aggressive and takes pleasure in the violence he inflicts on the town's deputies. The large piece of rotten canvas Rambo finds in the woods and turns into a makeshift poncho was not in the script, but rather a random piece of discarded canvas discovered during production. Stallone joked about how the unusual item became a treasured prop on set, and he kept the canvas after filming ended. At least 3 stages of ponchos are known to exist, with one selling at auction in 2015 for over $75,000. With the exception of Lieutenant Clinton Morgan, played by Patrick Stack, the National Guardsmen who fire at Rambo at the mine shaft are referred to by the same names as the actors playing them. The firearms used in First Blood had to be imported into Canada because of the country's strict firearms regulations. In January 1982, more than $50,000 worth of weapons were stolen from the set, including M16 rifles, Remington shotguns, .44 Magnum revolvers, and Colt AR-15 rifles. Although the weapons had been modified to fire blanks, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police warned that they could potentially be converted to fire live ammunition. Following the theft, the Canadian Army was brought in to guard the set, with some of the soldiers also appearing as extras in the film. Filming initially faced unusually warm and sunny weather, despite the crew needing an overcast setting. Heavy snowfall that began in January 1982 then delayed production by 2 months. Further delays followed after all the cast injuries during stunts, so with filming running over schedule, Richard Crenna's role was reduced to avoid triggering higher fees under his contract. In David Morrell's novel, the cave Rambo enters is filled with bats. For the film, the filmmakers replaced them with rats to create a different kind of threat. The rats seen on screen were actually white lab rats that had been dyed brown. First Blood was originally given a budget of $11 million, but the production eventually cost closer to $17 million after filming ran several months longer than planned. The extended schedule also caused delays to the filming of Rocky III, creating further complications for Stallone's schedule. The film grossed over $160 million worldwide and was the first major Hollywood blockbuster to be released in China, where it came out in 1985. When Stallone ranked the Rambo films during an appearance on the UK chat show The Graham Norton Show, he placed First Blood at the top of the list. He described it as his favourite of the series and said he would not change a thing about it. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about First Blood. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.